The moment Kira Vance looked into the eyes of the man sent to murder her, she did the unthinkable. She smiled and said, "You're late. I've been waiting 3 days." Cade Thorne had killed 47 people in service to his king. He'd never lost a night's sleep over any of them. The drive up the mountain had taken 4 hours through ice-slicked roads that would have killed a human driver. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt path that didn't exist on any map, tucked into a fold of the Rockies where cell service was a myth and the nearest neighbor lived 15 miles down. Perfect isolation. Perfect for a clean job. King Dominic's orders had been simple: she has something that threatens us all. End her. Bring proof. No name for what she possessed. No explanation for how a lone human woman could threaten a kingdom of wolves. Just the coordinates, a photo, and the cold certainty in his king's eyes. Cade had learned long ago not to ask questions. The cabin's lock gave way under his hands like wet paper. He moved through the dark hallway silent as smoke, his wolf senses cataloging everything: pine smoke from a dying fire, coffee grounds, old books, and underneath it all, the warm copper scent of human blood pumping through human veins. She should have been asleep. The bedroom was 30 feet away, and his intel said she kept no weapons. Instead, he found her sitting at the kitchen table in a pool of lamplight, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans like she'd been expecting company. 2 cups of coffee steamed between her hands. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and her eyes, pale gray, almost silver in the dim light, tracked him as he filled the doorway. "You're late," she said, and smiled like they were old friends. "I've been waiting 3 days." Cade's hand hovered at his side, claws half extended. In 12 years as the Alpha King's enforcer, he'd seen targets beg, bargain, run, fight. He'd watched men twice his size weep at his feet and women offer their bodies for another hour of breathing. He'd never seen anyone pour him coffee. "How did you know I was coming? Is that your question?" She lifted 1 cup and took a sip, watching him over the rim. "Because I'll only answer one truthfully before you do what you came for." I'd hate to waste it on something so obvious. He should have killed her then. Every instinct he'd honed through years of blood and service screamed at him to cross the room in 2 strides and end this conversation with his claws. A clean death. Quick and quiet, the way he'd delivered 47 others. But his feet wouldn't move. The woman, Kira, the file had called her, Kira Vance, 28, no living family, worked remotely as a translator. Set down her cup and folded her hands on the scarred wooden table. "I know what you are, Cade Thorne. I know you're the monster King Dominic sends when he wants someone erased from the world. I've seen your wolf, black as a moonless night, with a scar running down the left side of your muzzle." Her eyes never wavered from his. "I've seen you kill in my dreams for 3 weeks. I know exactly how strong you are, how fast, how many ways you've learned to end a human life." His wolf stirred uneasily beneath his skin. "She shouldn't know that. No one should know that. And yet you're sitting here drinking coffee." "I'm sitting here because running wouldn't help, and I'd rather die warm than frozen in the woods." She pushed the 2nd cup toward the empty chair across from her. "I'm also sitting here because you're going to have questions, and you seem like the type who needs a minute to catch up." Against every ounce of training and instinct, Cade moved to the table. He didn't sit, that would be suicide-level stupidity, but he planted his hands on the back of the chair and leaned forward until he could see the flecks of darker gray in her silver eyes. "You have 1 chance to tell me what you stole from my king." "I didn't steal anything." No fear in her voice. No tremor, no racing pulse betrayed by the flutter at her throat. "Your king is afraid of what I am. What I know." She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle she'd been working on for weeks. "Don't you want to know why he really wants me dead?" "I don't need to know why. I just need to complete my mission." "That's not a question." Something almost like pity crossed her face. "You've been doing this for so long, haven't you? Following orders. Never asking why the blood on your hands had to be spilled. Does it ever get heavy?" Cade's claws punched fully through his fingertips, scoring deep grooves into the wooden chair. The wolf inside him was pacing now, agitated in a way he hadn't felt since he was a teenager still learning control. I'm not here for therapy. No, you're here to kill me. And you will, probably. But first, she stood, and he noted distantly that she was smaller than he'd expected, barely reaching his shoulder, with the kind of slender build that would snap like kindling in his hands. First, I want to give you something. Don't. It's not a weapon. She moved around the table with no urgency, no attempt to flee, until she stood close enough that he could count her eyelashes. Close enough that her scent wrapped around him, lavender and something else, something that made his wolf press against the inside of his skull with desperate urgency. It's just the truth. The one thing your king has made sure you've never had. She reached up and pressed her palm flat against his chest, right over his heart. The world exploded. Pain ripped through him like lightning finding ground, and with it came images, not memories, not exactly, but something older and stranger. A woman with silver eyes screaming as flames consumed a village. Children with those same eyes being dragged from their homes by soldiers in the uniform of the royal guard. Blood on snow, and the sound of King Dominic's father giving an order in a voice like grinding stone, find them all. Every last one. The seer's end tonight. Cade staggered backward, his spine hitting the kitchen counter hard enough to crack the laminate. His wolf was howling inside him now, a sound of recognition and grief and something that felt horribly like hope. What did you do to me? The words came out guttural, barely human. Kira hadn't moved from where she stood by the table. Her hand was still raised, palm out, and in the lamplight he could see it trembling for the first time. I showed you what your king did to my family 200 years ago. What the council did to every seer they could find, men, women, children, because we could see the truth of things. Because we couldn't be controlled. Seers are extinct. The bloodline ended in the purge. The bloodline went into hiding. She lowered her hand and wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold, though the cabin was warm. My grandmother taught my mother, and my mother taught me. We learned to stay small, stay hidden, never use our gifts where anyone could see. It worked for 200 years. Then how? How did your king find me? The ghost of her earlier smile returned, but brittle now, edged with exhaustion. Because I got careless. Because I saw something I shouldn't have, and I tried to warn someone who turned out to be a wolf in human clothing. She met his eyes. I saw your king's war coming, Cade. I saw what he's planning to do to the human world once he's consolidated power over the remaining packs. And I tried to stop it. Cade's mind was reeling. The images she'd forced into his head were still there, burned into his memory like brands. The screaming woman, the burning village, the children crying as they were torn from their parents' arms. His wolf was pressing against his control, desperate to do something, though he couldn't tell if it wanted to run or fight or fall at this woman's feet. If you could see me coming, he said slowly, why didn't you run? Why sit here and wait for your death? Kira's silver eyes searched his face, looking for something he couldn't name. Because I saw more than just your arrival, Cade. I saw what happens next. What happens if I run, and what happens if I stay. And? If I run, you catch me before dawn. You kill me quickly because you're not cruel, and you return to your king with my body. He uses my death to cement his power, and within 5 years, the human world burns. She moved closer again, slow and deliberate, until she was near enough for him to feel the heat of her body. If I stay, if I make you listen, there's a chance. Just a small one. A fork in the road where everything could go differently. You're betting your life on a chance? I'm betting my life on you. She reached up again, but this time she didn't touch his chest. Her fingers hovered just above the old scar that ran down the left side of his face, twin to the one on his wolf's muzzle. Because I've seen what you really are, underneath all the blood and orders and blind loyalty. I've seen the boy who got this scar trying to protect his little sister from the same men who burned my ancestors. I've seen what your king took from you and made you forget. Cade caught her wrist before she could make contact, his grip tight enough to bruise. His voice, when it came, sounded like it belonged to a stranger. I don't have a sister. Kira's eyes were ancient with sorrow. You did. Her name was Mira. She had your eyes and your stubborn jaw, and she was 8 years old when Dominic's father decided your family's bloodline was too strong, too dangerous to the throne. A tear tracked down her cheek, and she made no move to wipe it away. You were 14. You fought so hard to save her. And when you failed, the king's mind weaver took every memory of her from you as a reward for your loyalty. The name hit him like a physical blow. Mira. Something in his chest cracked open, and through the gap poured a flood of images, a little girl with tangled dark hair laughing as she chased fireflies, the weight of her in his arms as he ran through burning woods, the sound of her screaming his name as the soldiers dragged her away. Cade released Kira's wrist and stumbled back until he hit the wall. His legs gave out, and he slid to the floor with his hands pressed against his skull, trying to hold in memories that were 20 years overdue. What did you do to me? The words were a broken whisper. What the hell did you do? Kira knelt in front of him, her silver eyes holding his as his world collapsed. I gave you back what was stolen. The truth about who you were before they hollowed you out and filled you with orders. In the distance, the howl of wolves echoed through the mountains. More than one pack, from the sound of it. Coming closer. Kira's head turned toward the window, her face going pale. They're ahead of schedule. She looked back at Cade, and for the first time, he saw real fear in her eyes. You weren't the only one he sent, were you? You were just supposed to be first. Cade forced himself to his feet, his wolf surging against his control with new purpose. The memories of Mira were still crashing through him, her laugh, her smell, the way she used to climb into his bed during thunderstorms, but underneath the grief, something else was rising. Rage. Pure and cold and aimed at the man who had stolen his sister, his memories, his entire life. No. His voice came out steadier than he expected. I was supposed to be the only one. If there are others coming, then your king doesn't trust you anymore. Kira grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. We have maybe 10 minutes before they're here. I need to know right now, Cade Thorne, are you still here to kill me? The wolves howled again, closer now. Through the window, Cade could see shapes moving in the tree line, too fast and too large to be anything but his kind. He looked down at the woman who had just destroyed everything he thought he knew about himself. The woman his king wanted dead. The last seer, with silver eyes full of secrets and a touch that could unlock buried memories. His wolf made the decision before his human mind caught up. Get your coat, he said. We're leaving. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel too. Get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The night swallowed them whole as they ran. Cade kept Kira ahead of him, one hand on her elbow to guide her through terrain her human eyes couldn't navigate. His wolf had taken over his senses completely, every sound amplified, every scent a story, every shadow a potential threat. But the beast itself remained unnervingly quiet, padding through his consciousness like a ghost rather than the snarling predator he'd relied on for 20 years. Move. Don't think. Just move. The pursuing wolves were faster than he'd expected. At least 6 of them, moving in a hunting pattern he recognized from his own training. They weren't trying to catch up, they were herding, driving their prey toward a killing ground of their choosing. There's a ravine, Kira gasped, her breath clouding in the frozen air. Half a mile north. The rocks will mask our scent. He didn't ask how she knew. He'd stopped asking questions the moment his world had cracked open on her kitchen floor. They hit the ravine at a dead sprint, scrambling down loose shale that would have broken human ankles. Cade caught Kira twice when she stumbled, hauling her against his chest and half carrying her the final 100 yards to the narrow creek bed at the bottom. Ice-cold water soaked through their boots, but he pushed them upstream, letting the current wash away their trail. Behind them, the howls grew confused. Frustrated. In here. Kira pulled him toward a gap in the rock face, barely wide enough for his shoulders. The cave beyond opened into a space the size of a small room, dry and sheltered from the wind. Cade listened for a long moment, his wolf straining toward sounds too faint for human ears. The pack had split up, circling back toward the cabin, looking for a trail that no longer existed. We have maybe 4 hours before dawn, he said. They'll regroup and try again with fresh eyes. Kira sank down against the cave wall, her arms wrapped around her knees. In the darkness, he could barely make out her features, but he didn't need light to know she was shaking. The adrenaline crash would hit soon, it always did, even for wolves. For a human who'd just fled for her life through frozen wilderness, it would be brutal. He shrugged off his jacket and tossed it to her without comment. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Help me run. You could have let them take me and walked away clean. There's nothing clean about any of this. The memories of Mira were still there, pressing against his skull like broken glass. Her laugh. The gap in her front teeth. The way she'd held onto his hand so tight the night their father didn't come home. Every image was a knife blade, and he had no idea how to make them stop. The Mind Weaver. His voice came out rough, scraped raw. You said the King's Mind Weaver took my memories. Does that mean they can be given back? All of them? Kira was silent for a long moment. Some of them. The ones that weren't destroyed entirely, just buried. That's what I did in the cabin. I didn't create those memories of your sister. I found them where they'd been locked away and opened the door. And the rest? Gone. When a mind weaver truly erases something, it's like it never existed. There are holes in your past that nothing can fill. She paused. I'm sorry. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. Cade laughed, and the sound was hollow even to his own ears. What I wanted was to complete my mission and go home. What I wanted was for my wolf to obey me when I told it to kill you. What I wanted. He stopped. The words had nowhere to go. Your wolf didn't disobey you, Kira said softly. It recognized something your conscious mind couldn't. Seers and wolves have always been connected. We can see through the barriers you build, straight to the truth of what you are. Your beast knew that killing me would mean killing part of yourself. That makes no sense. None of this makes sense. And yet here we are. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sound of water and wind. Cade's wolf had settled into an alert stillness, watching Kira through his eyes with an intensity that made him uneasy. The beast had never focused on anyone like this. Not prey, not enemy, not the handful of women he'd taken to bed over the years. This was something different. Something his wolf understood and his human mind refused to examine. I need to know what you can offer me, he said finally. You mentioned a bargain. Intelligence. Proof of why the king wants you dead. Kira lifted her head. 7 days. Give me 7 days, and I'll show you everything, the king's real plans, the truth about the purge, why my bloodline was hunted to extinction. After that, if you still believe I deserve to die, I won't run. I'll kneel for the blade myself. And if I don't believe it? Then we find another way. Together. 7 days. It was insane. The king would have his head on a pike within 3 days of his missed check-in. Every tracker, every enforcer, every loyal wolf in the kingdom would be hunting for them both. But the memory of Myra's face floated through his mind. 8 years old, terrified, screaming his name as soldiers dragged her away, and the rage that had ignited in that cabin roared back to life. I need to know. Whatever it costs, I need to know the truth. 7 days, he heard himself say. After that, we reassess. They made it to a hunter's cabin 6 miles north just as the sky began to lighten. The place had been abandoned for at least a season, but it had 4 walls, a roof, and a wood stove that still functioned. Kate got a fire going while Kira collapsed onto the bare mattress in the corner, asleep almost before her head touched the pillow. He sat with his back against the door and watched her breathe. She was pretty, he realized distantly. Not in the polished way of court women or the dangerous way of the she-wolves he occasionally took to bed. Pretty in a real way. The kind of face that would age into beauty, with strong bones and a mouth that looked like it smiled easily when she wasn't running for her life. His wolf stirred at the thought, and he shoved it down hard. This isn't about her. This is about the truth. But even as he thought it, he knew he was lying to himself. Something had shifted in that cabin when she touched him, something fundamental, something that went deeper than memory or mission or the oath he'd sworn to his king. He was still trying to name it when the first howl echoed through the dawn. 3 of them came through the tree line just as full light hit the valley. Cade recognized them immediately: Brennan, Tomas, and Yara. Trackers he'd trained with a decade ago, wolves he'd shed blood beside on a dozen missions. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out to block the cabin's exits while their wolves rippled beneath their skin. Thorn. Brennan's voice carried across the frozen ground, calm and professional. You missed your check-in. Cade stepped out onto the porch, keeping his body between the door and the approaching wolves. I needed more time. The target had information relevant to the mission. The mission was termination, not interrogation. Brennan stopped 20 feet from the cabin, close enough for conversation but far enough to shift if needed. His eyes were flat, cold. The king sent us to assist. Bring out the woman and we'll finish this together. No. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Tomas and Yara exchanged glances. Brennan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, the subtle settling of weight that meant he was preparing to attack. That wasn't a request, Thorn. You know what happens to wolves who defy the crown. I know what the crown tells us happens. Cade felt his own wolf rising now, finally stirring from its strange silence. I'm starting to wonder how much of that is true. She's gotten to you. Brennan's lip curled. I told the king a human woman wouldn't be able to seduce you, but he was worried. He said seers have a way of. Of what? Showing people the truth? Cade took a step forward, and he felt rather than saw Kira appear in the doorway behind him. She showed me my sister, Brennan. My sister who the king told me never existed. Who the mind weavers ripped out of my head because I tried to save her from what he deserved. Brennan's voice went hard. Your bloodline was contaminated, Thorn. Your mother was a traitor and your sister was a. Cade hit him before the word finished leaving his mouth. They went down in a tangle of limbs and claws, half-shifted and snarling. Brennan was fast, faster than Cade remembered, but rage had lit something primal in Cade's chest, and his wolf was finally awake, finally burning with the fury they should have felt 20 years ago. Tomas came at him from the left. Cade caught the strike on his forearm, let his claws rake across the other wolf's shoulder, and used the momentum to throw him into Yara as she lunged for his back. They went down together, and Cade had half a second to register Kira screaming his name before Brennan's claws found his ribs. Pain exploded through his side. Hot blood soaked his shirt. But he'd been wounded worse, fought through worse, and Brennan's look of triumph lasted exactly as long as it took Cade to grab his throat and squeeze. Yield, Cade growled. Brennan's eyes were bulging, his hands scrabbling uselessly at Cade's iron grip. Behind them, Tomas and Yara were struggling to their feet, but Cade could see the calculation in their faces. 3-on-1 should have been easy. It should have been over in seconds. But Cade Thorn hadn't survived 12 years as the king's executioner by being easy to kill. Stand down, he snarled at the other 2, or I crush his windpipe and take you both while you're still watching him die. Yara hesitated. Tomas's claws retracted slowly, his hands rising in surrender. Cade released Brennan and stepped back, keeping all 3 in his line of sight. Get out of here. Tell the king I need more time to complete my mission. We can't, Tomas started. Tell him the woman knows about the purge. About the seers. About what was really done to the bloodlines who resisted the crown. Cade's voice was steady, but his heart was pounding, and the wound in his side was leaking blood faster than his healing could compensate. Tell him I'm bringing back intelligence worth more than one human life. That should buy me a few days. Brennan was on his feet now, his ruined throat already healing. It won't save you. You know that. The moment you raised your hand against the crown. I raised my hand against wolves who attacked me. Self-defense isn't treason. The lie tasted like ash, but Cade sold it anyway. Now go. Before I change my mind about letting you leave alive. They went. Slowly, watching him with eyes that promised this wasn't over, but they went, melting back into the tree line and disappearing into the morning shadows. Cade stayed standing until he couldn't hear their footsteps anymore. Then his knees buckled, and Kira was there, catching him before he hit the ground. You're hurt. Her hands pressed against his ribs, coming away red. Inside. I need to stop the bleeding. He let her guide him back into the cabin, let her ease him onto the floor by the stove. The fire was still burning, and its warmth felt distant, unreal. His wolf was fading back into silence, its work done, leaving him alone with the pain. She's not showing you the truth, Thorn. Brennan's voice. But it wasn't coming from outside, it was a memory, something gasped in the seconds before Cade had released him. Something he'd almost missed in the chaos. She's showing you what she wants you to see. Ask her about the night your mother died. His mother. Killed by rogues when he was 8 years old. The defining tragedy of his childhood, the reason he'd sworn himself to the king's service, the foundation stone of every choice he'd made since. Cade opened his eyes and found Kira kneeling beside him, her hands pressed against his wound, her face inches from his. He said something, Cade managed. Brennan. At the end. He told me to ask you about my mother's death. The change in her expression was instant. The color drained from her face, and her hands went still against his ribs. He could hear her heart rate spike, could smell the sharp chemical tang of fear flooding her system. Kira. I was hoping, her voice cracked. I thought we'd have more time. I was going to tell you, I swear, but I needed you to trust me first, to understand. Understand what? He grabbed her wrist, held her in place when she tried to pull away. What do you know about my mother? The tears that slipped down her cheeks were silent. Her silver eyes, when they met his, held a grief so old and so deep that it stole his breath. I know that she wasn't killed by rogues. Kira's voice was barely a whisper. I know that the king's wolves murdered her because she was trying to protect you and Mira from the same fate that found your sister. The fire crackled. Outside, a raven called. And I know, Kira finished, because my mother was there. My mother was the one who tried to save her and failed. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 3. The fire had burned down to embers, casting the cabin in shades of red and shadow. Cade hadn't moved from where he sat against the wall, his wound half healed and his world fully destroyed. Kira knelt across from him, her hands clasped in her lap, waiting. She'd stopped crying several minutes ago, but the tracks still glistened on her cheeks, and her silver eyes held the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying secrets too heavy for one person to bear. Tell me everything. His voice didn't sound like his own. From the beginning. No more pieces, I want all of it. It will hurt. It already hurts. He laughed, and the sound was jagged. My entire life is a lie built on my mother's corpse. How much worse can it get? Kira flinched, but she didn't look away. You'd be surprised. She moved closer, settling onto the floor beside him until their shoulders almost touched. The proximity should have triggered his defenses. She was still technically his target, still a threat, but his wolf had gone quiet again, watching her with that strange intensity that made no sense. "I need to show you," she said. "Words aren't enough for this. Will you let me?" He knew what she was asking. The same thing she'd done in her cabin, when she'd pressed her palm to his chest and cracked open the vault where his memories of Mira had been buried. But this time she was asking permission. He wasn't sure that made it better. "Do it." Her hands were cold when they took his, her fingers threading through his like they'd done it 1,000 times before. The touch sent electricity crackling up his arms, and he had a single heartbeat to brace himself before the vision took him. Snow. Blood. The smell of pine smoke and terror. He was seeing through someone else's eyes, a woman running through frozen woods with a child clutched against her chest. The child was crying, her small body shaking with sobs she was trying to muffle against her mother's shoulder. Behind them, wolves howled. Almost there, the woman gasped. "Just a little further, baby. Mama's got you." But she was lying. Cade could feel it in the burning of her lungs, the way her legs were failing, the horrible certainty building in her chest that they weren't going to make it. The safe house was still 2 miles away, and the wolves were so close she could hear their paws crunching through the snow. The woman stumbled into a clearing and stopped dead. 3 wolves waited in formation, their breath fogging in the moonlight. And behind them, mounted on a black horse like something out of a nightmare, sat a man Cade recognized from portraits in the palace halls. King Marcus Ashford. Dominic's father. The Alpha King who had ruled for 40 years before passing the crown to his son. Elena Thorne. The king's voice was pleasant, conversational. "You've led us quite a chase." The woman, Elena, his mother, Cade realized with a jolt that threatened to shatter the vision, pressed her daughter closer and said nothing. "I'm going to give you one chance," King Marcus continued. "Tell me where you've hidden the evidence, and I'll make it quick. For both of you." "There is no evidence." Elena's voice was steady despite her terror. "I destroyed it." "We both know that's a lie." The king dismounted with the easy grace of a predator in no hurry. "You spent 3 months gathering proof of what my family did to the seers. You copied documents from the royal archives. You spoke to survivors in hiding. And you were foolish enough to believe you could expose us without consequences. The council deserves to know the truth. The purge wasn't about protecting the kingdom. It was about protecting your bloodline. The seers could see what you really are, what your grandfather did to seize power, and you slaughtered them for it." King Marcus smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Cade had ever seen. "Yes," he said simply. "We did. And now we're going to slaughter you." The wolves lunged. Elena threw her daughter to the side, toward the trees, toward a shadow that Cade suddenly realized was another woman, hiding, watching, frozen with horror. And turned to face her death with her claws extended and her wolf rising to the surface. She fought. Gods, she fought. Cade watched his mother tear out one wolf's throat and cripple another before the third brought her down, and even then she kept struggling, kept clawing, kept trying to buy time for her daughter to run. But the girl wasn't running. She was screaming, trying to get back to her mother, and the woman in the shadows was holding her back, a hand clamped over her mouth to muffle the sound. "Mama! Mama!" The king walked over to where Elena lay broken in the snow and crouched beside her. "Your son," he said quietly. "The boy. Where is he?" Elena spat blood in his face. "Safe. Beyond your reach. And one day he'll know what you did. One day he'll come for you." "No." King Marcus wiped his face with casual contempt. "He'll serve me. He'll kill for me. He'll become exactly what you never wanted him to be, my weapon, forged in the grief of losing you." He leaned closer. "And he'll never know the truth. We'll make sure of it." He straightened and nodded to the remaining wolf. The last thing Elena Thorne saw before she died was her daughter's face, silver eyes wide with horror, watching from the shadows. Cade came back to himself with a scream trapped in his throat. He was on his feet somehow, his back pressed against the wall, his claws fully extended and his wolf howling with a grief that felt like it would tear him apart from the inside. Kira was still on the floor, tears streaming down her face, her hands pressed over her mouth. "The girl," he managed. "The girl in the vision. Was me." Her voice was barely audible. "I was 4 years old. My mother had been helping yours gather evidence against the crown. When the wolves came, she hid us in the trees and made me promise to stay quiet, stay still, no matter what I saw." The room was spinning. Cade's wound had started bleeding again, but he couldn't feel it, couldn't feel anything except the rage and the grief and the horrible, dawning understanding of what his life actually was. "I watched your mother die." Kira rose slowly, like she was afraid any sudden movement would shatter him. "I've carried that vision since I was old enough to remember. I never understood who she was, who the little girl was, your sister Mira, I realize now, until I started having dreams about you 3 weeks ago. Until I saw your face and knew you were the boy King Marcus talked about. The weapon he wanted to forge. The council." Cade's voice came out guttural, barely human. "He said someone argued to spare me. Lord Ashworth. He's dead now, but he was the one who convinced the king that a child with your bloodline could be valuable if raised properly. If trained. If the memories of that night were erased." Kira took a step toward him. "That's why the Mind Weaver took your sister from you. Not just because of what happened to her, but because Mira saw everything. She was there when your mother was killed. If any trace of her remained in your memory, you might have started asking questions." Cade's legs gave out. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands, his entire body shaking with something that felt like sobs but wouldn't come out. 47 people. He'd killed 47 people in service to the man who had murdered his mother, orphaned his sister, and erased his own identity. He was exactly what King Marcus had wanted him to be. A weapon with no memory, no conscience, no loyalty to anything but the lie. Cade. Kira was kneeling in front of him, her hands hovering near his face but not quite touching. He looked up and found her silver eyes swimming with tears that matched the ones finally spilling down his own cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry this is how you had to find out. I wanted to tell you sooner, I've wanted to tell you since the first dream, but I knew you wouldn't believe me. I knew I'd have to show you, and showing you meant destroying me." "Yes." She didn't try to soften it. "But you deserved the truth. Even if it broke you." He reached out and grabbed her wrist, not hard, not violent, just needing something to anchor him before the grief pulled him under entirely. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, she shifted closer until she was pressed against his side, her arm around his shoulders, her forehead resting against his temple. "Breathe," she murmured. "Just breathe. I'm here." He didn't know how long they stayed like that. Minutes. Maybe hours. The fire died completely, leaving them in darkness cut only by the gray light of dawn creeping through the dirty windows. His wolf had stopped howling, but it was still there, pressed against his consciousness with an urgency he couldn't interpret. Something was happening. Something beyond the grief and the rage and the fundamental shattering of everything he'd believed. His wolf was reaching toward Kira, straining against his control, trying to bond. It's trying to bond. The realization hit him like ice water. He jerked back, putting space between them, and saw his own shock reflected in Kira's silver eyes. "You feel it," she breathed. "I thought I was imagining, but you feel it too. It's impossible." His voice was hoarse. "Warriors don't bond. Not like this, not without." "Without what? Time? Courtship? Some formal ceremony where the council approves the match?" She laughed, and the sound was edged with hysteria. "Cade, nothing about this is possible. Seers aren't supposed to have mates at all, We're too different, too connected to forces that wolves don't understand. And you're the king's executioner. We should be enemies. We should be. I know what we should be. But his wolf didn't care about should. His wolf had made its choice the moment Kira touched him in that cabin 3 days ago, and every moment since had only strengthened its conviction. She was his. Not his target, not his prisoner, not his temporary ally, but his in a way that went deeper than oaths or orders or the carefully constructed walls around his heart. He was so completely screwed. A sound from outside snapped them both to attention. Hoofbeats. Multiple riders approaching fast. Cade was on his feet instantly, his wound screaming in protest but his body responding to years of combat training. He moved to the window and peered through the grimy glass. Not wolves. A single rider on a lathered horse, dressed in the plain clothes of a village messenger. Wait here. He crossed to the door and stepped outside before Kira could argue. The messenger pulled up short when he saw Cade, his face going pale. You're Thorn. The enforcer. What do you want? Message. From someone who says they're a friend. The man's hand shook as he pulled a folded paper from his saddlebag. Paid me good coin to find you. Said you'd be in this area and that the lady with silver eyes would know the rest. Cade took the paper. Who sent you? Didn't give a name. Just said to tell you the hollow wolves walk again, and you've got 2 days before they find your scent. The messenger was gone before Cade could ask anything else, his horse's hooves pounding back down the mountain trail like death itself was chasing him. Cade opened the paper. The king has declared you traitor. Blood bounty on both your heads. 50,000 gold for each of you, dead or alive. He's awakened the hollow wolves. 2 days, maybe less. Find shelter underground. They can't track through stone. You have an ally at court. Trust the vision. No signature. No seal. Kira appeared in the doorway, her face ashen. Hollow wolves. I've read about them, but I thought they were a myth. They're not. Cade crumpled the paper in his fist. They're exactly what the stories say, ancient enforcers, bound to the crown through blood magic. No souls, no pain, no way to kill them except with weapons that were lost centuries ago. Then how do we? We run. We find shelter underground like this message says, and we pray that whoever sent it actually knows what they're talking about. He started to move past her into the cabin, but she caught his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong, and when he looked at her face, he saw something that made his stomach drop. There's something else. Her voice was barely audible. Another vision. I've been having it since the night before you came to kill me, and I didn't want to tell you. I was hoping it would change, hoping I'd see another way, but what? The tears spilled down her cheeks again, and this time she made no effort to hide them. There's only one way to stop the king. Only one way to survive what's coming. She took a shaky breath. I have to die, Cade. Not pretend, not fake it, actually die. And you have to be the one to kill me. The words hung in the cold morning air. His wolf, which had been so desperate to bond with her moments ago, went absolutely still. And Cade, who had killed 47 people without losing a night's sleep, felt something inside him crack open and start to bleed. No. It's the only way. No. He gripped her shoulders, pulled her close until they were eye to eye. I don't care what your visions say. I don't care what you've seen. I am not going to kill you. You don't understand. The death isn't permanent, there's a way back, a ritual that seers used to use when they needed to walk between worlds, but it requires someone to stop my heart and someone to start it again. It requires trust. Her silver eyes held his, bottomless with fear and something else, something that looked terrifyingly like faith. It requires you. Why me? Because you're the only one who can do both. She pressed her palm against his chest, right over his heart, exactly where she'd touched him 3 days ago. You're the only one I trust to kill me and bring me back. The bond that had been trying to form between them pulsed with sudden, undeniable force. His wolf surged forward, and for one dizzying moment, Kate could feel everything Kira felt, her terror, her determination, her fragile, desperate hope that he would say yes. Her absolute certainty that if he refused, they would both die anyway. And the king would win. 2 days, he said finally. We have 2 days before the hollow wolves find us. Yes. Then we have 2 days to find another way. He pulled her against his chest and held her there, her heart beating against his wolf howling with grief for what was coming. Because I will not lose you, Kira Vance. I've already lost everyone else. Her arms came around him, and she buried her face in his shoulder. You might not have a choice, she whispered. But Kate had spent his whole life following orders, doing what he was told, being the weapon other people wanted him to be. He was done letting other people choose his fate. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The underground passage smelled of damp stone and centuries of darkness. Kate had found it exactly where the anonymous message suggested, beneath an abandoned mine shaft 3 miles north of the cabin, hidden behind a rockfall that had clearly been arranged by someone who knew what they were doing. Someone who wanted them to survive. They'd been underground for 18 hours. 18 hours of silence, of Kira refusing to meet his eyes, of his wolf pacing restlessly through his consciousness while the weight of her impossible request hung between them like a blade. Stop my heart. I'll find my way back to you. He'd rather cut off his own arm. The prophecy, he said finally, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Tell me exactly what it says. Kira was sitting against the far wall, her knees drawn up to her chest, looking smaller than she had any right to. The lantern they'd salvaged cast dancing shadows across her face, turning her silver eyes into mirrors that reflected nothing. My grandmother told it to me when I was 6 years old. Her voice was flat, reciting from memory. When the seer's heart stops by the warrior's hand, the false king's crown will turn to sand. The truth will blaze through every mind, and wolves will see what lies behind. I didn't understand it then. I thought it was just a story. And now? Now I know what it means. She finally looked at him, and the resignation in her expression made his chest ache. My death, at your hands specifically, will trigger something ancient. The same magic the seers used to use when they needed to reveal hidden truths to the masses. It will broadcast everything to every wolf in the kingdom simultaneously. The massacres. The lies. The truth about how the Ashford family really came to power. The stolen throne. Kate moved closer, settling onto the ground across from her. That's what my mother discovered, isn't it? That's what she was trying to expose. The Ashfords weren't the rightful royal line. 200 years ago, they were just another noble family, powerful, but not royal. The true king was a wolf named Aldrich Varen, and he had a seer as his mate. Kira's voice dropped. My ancestor, actually. When the Ashfords staged their coup, they didn't just kill the king. They killed his seer, and every other seer who might have revealed what they'd done. They rewrote history, destroyed the records, and made sure no one would ever know the truth. And the purge was about eliminating witnesses. Anyone with seer blood could potentially access the memories of what really happened. We're connected to each other across generations in ways wolves don't understand. As long as even one of us survived, the truth could never be fully buried. Cade's mind was reeling. Everything he'd believed about the kingdom, about the royal line, about the natural order of wolf society, all of it was built on murder and lies. So your death exposes all of this, he said slowly. Every wolf sees the truth, and the Ashford dynasty falls. That's the theory. And you come back. The ritual you mentioned. Kira was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice cracked. I need to tell you something. Something I didn't. She stopped, pressed her hands against her face, and took a shuddering breath. The prophecy doesn't say I come back, Cade. It doesn't say anything about what happens to the seer after her heart stops. I was so sure there would be a way, but I've been searching through every memory, every scrap of knowledge my grandmother passed down, and I can't find. No. The word came out like a snarl. His wolf surged forward, and for a moment his vision went gold at the edges, the beast fighting for control with a desperation he'd never experienced. I won't do it. He was on his feet without remembering standing, pacing the small chamber like the animal he truly was. I've spent my entire life taking lives on command. Following orders. Being the weapon everyone wanted me to be. I cannot, add you to that list. This isn't an order, Cade. This is my choice. Then choose differently. The words echoed off the stone walls, harsh and jagged. Kira flinched but didn't look away. You think I want this? She rose to face him, her chin lifted despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. You think I've spent my whole life looking forward to dying in a cave at 28? I had dreams, Cade. Plans. I wanted to see the ocean. I wanted to fall in love with someone who'd stay. Her voice broke. I wanted to live. Then live. We'll find another way. There is no other way. The hollow wolves are coming, you know they are. We can hear them getting closer every hour. And even if we somehow escape them, the king will never stop hunting us. Never stop hunting anyone with seer blood. My death can end this. My death can save thousands of lives and bring down a dynasty built on the bones of my ancestors. Your death will destroy me. The admission hung between them, raw and terrible. Cade hadn't meant to say it. Hadn't even known it was true until the words were out, but his wolf was howling in agreement, and the bond that had been building between them pulsed with undeniable force. Kira crossed the distance between them in 3 steps and pressed her palm against his chest. I know, she whispered. I know what I'm asking. But if you truly care for me, if this bond means anything at all, then let me choose how my story ends. Let me make my death mean something. It means something to me. His voice was hoarse, barely recognizable. You mean something to me. Then honor that by letting me be more than a victim. More than a woman who died running. She looked up at him with those silver eyes full of stars and sorrow. Let me be the one who brought down a false king. A sound echoed through the passage, distant, but unmistakable. The scrape of claws on stone. The shuffling gait of creatures that felt no pain and knew no mercy. The hollow wolves had found them. There were 7 of them. They came through the passage in single file, their malformed bodies barely fitting through the narrow space. In the flickering lantern light, Cade could see what centuries of blood magic had done to them, the patchy fur, the exposed bone, the eyes that glowed with sickly yellow light and held nothing behind them. No soul. No consciousness. Just endless, mindless obedience to whoever held their leash. Stay behind me. Cade was already shifting, letting his wolf surge to the surface. Bones cracked and reformed. Muscle rippled beneath skin that sprouted black fur. In seconds, he stood in his full wolf form, massive, scarred, and radiating the lethal power that had made him the Alpha King's most feared weapon. The first hollow wolf lunged. Cade met it mid-leap, his jaws closing around its throat with crushing force. The creature made no sound as he tore through decayed flesh and brittle bone. No pain. No fear. Just that horrible yellow gaze, still fixed on him even as its head separated from its body. The second and third came together. Cade caught one with his claws, ripping through its chest cavity, while he used his momentum to slam the other against the stone wall hard enough to shatter its spine. Neither stopped moving. The one with the ruined chest kept dragging itself toward him, and the one with the broken back started pulling itself forward with its front legs. They can't be killed. They just keep coming. He'd known it. Every wolf knew the stories about the hollow wolves, the ancient enforcers who couldn't die because they were already dead, bound to their duty by magic older than the kingdom itself. But knowing something and watching a creature with half its skull missing still trying to tear out your throat were very different things. Cade fought anyway. He took them apart piece by piece, working with methodical brutality to disable rather than kill. Legs. Jaws. Spines. Anything to slow them down, to buy Kira time, to find some way out of this nightmare that didn't end with both of them torn to shreds. But there were too many. For every creature he crippled, another took its place. His fur was matted with blood, his own and theirs, and his muscles burned with exhaustion. A claw caught his shoulder, tearing through muscle. Another raked across his ribs, reopening the wound that had barely started to heal. Cade! Kira's scream cut through the chaos. He turned just in time to see her throw herself between him and the hollow wolf that had circled behind them. Her hands came up instinctively, silver light blazing from her palms, some defensive reflex she probably didn't even know she had, and the creature staggered back with a howl of something that might have been surprise. But it recovered too fast. Its claws found her side, slicing through flesh, and Kira crumpled with a cry that shattered something inside Cade's chest. He didn't remember crossing the distance. One moment he was 15 feet away, surrounded by enemies, the next he was standing over her body in human form, his claws buried in the hollow wolf's skull, his voice a raw scream of rage that echoed off the stone walls. The creature finally stopped moving. But the others were still coming. Dragging their broken bodies forward. Reaching with twisted claws. And Kira was bleeding, so much blood pooling beneath her, her silver eyes going glassy and unfocused. Kira. Kira, stay with me. He gathered her in his arms, pressing his hand against the wound in her side. Too deep. Too much damage. His wolf was howling, straining against his control, and the bond between them was screaming with her pain. Cade. Her voice was barely a whisper. Listen to me. Save your strength. I'll get us out of here. There's no way out. Her hand found his, her grip weak but determined. You know there isn't. But there's still a chance. There's still. She pressed her palm against his, and the vision slammed into him. Sunlight. A field of wildflowers stretching to the horizon, purple and gold and white, swaying in a warm breeze that smelled of summer. He was standing at the edge of the field, and Kira was walking toward him. She was wearing a simple white dress, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, and she was smiling. Not the brittle smile she'd given him in her cabin, but something real and radiant and full of joy. She reached him and took his hands, and he saw the mark on her throat, his mark, the symbol of their bond, proof that she belonged to him and he to her. You're late, she said, laughing. I've been waiting. I'm here now. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, breathed in the scent of her. I'm never leaving again. Good. She took his hand and pressed it against the swell of her belly, round and full and unmistakable. Because we have someone who wants to meet you. Cade came back to himself with tears streaming down his face. Kira was looking up at him, her silver eyes somehow still bright despite the blood loss, despite the hollow wolves dragging themselves ever closer. That future exists, she whispered. I saw it. The field, the flowers, our child. It's real, Cade. It can happen. But only if you trust me. How? His voice cracked. How can that future exist if you're dead? Because death isn't always the end. The seers knew that. We walked between worlds, touched the places where life and death meet. If you stop my heart, if the prophecy is fulfilled, I'll be in that space between. And if you call me back, if you refuse to let me go. You think I can bring you back just by wanting it enough? I think the bond between us is stronger than either of us understands. I think you were meant to find me, Cade. Not to kill me, to save me. To be the warrior whose hand could stop my heart and the love whose heart could restart mine. The hollow wolves were almost on them. 5 left, closing in from all sides. Seconds at most. Stop my heart, Kira breathed. Let the prophecy fulfill itself. And then bring me home. I'll find my way back to you. Her hand tightened on his. I promise. Cade looked at the woman in his arms. The seer who had shattered his world and rebuilt it around her, the impossible mate his wolf had chosen without his permission, the only person who had ever made him feel like something other than a weapon. He looked at the future she'd shown him. The field of flowers. The child growing inside her. The life they could have, if he was brave enough to reach for it. He looked at the hollow wolves, their yellow eyes fixed on them both, their twisted bodies ready to tear them apart. And he made his choice. I love you. The words came out broken, desperate. I don't know when it happened, but I love you, and if you don't come back to me, I will tear apart every realm between this world and the next until I find you. Kira smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. I know, she whispered. I've seen it. Her eyes fluttered closed. Cade placed his hand over her heart. The hollow wolves lunged. And the lantern guttered out, plunging them into darkness. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.